each year that passes, a lot has changed, hasn't it? And unlike in my top 10 video game endings, well, it's mostly about story, and I didn't play 2 video games, namely the first Pikmin game and Conker's Bad Fur Day. This video, I played all 20 of these games to get my opinion straight on what I actually feel. So this video is 100% suitable of making. Granted, with it being twice as longer or even more longer than the last is really redundant, but at the same time, I still enjoy video games regardless, and I still have a childhood of playing these video games. And let me tell you that, unlike in video game endings where I discuss about the ending and less about the gameplay, this is all about the gameplay no matter what. And regardless of how my opinions have changed over time with these video games, with the less knowledge I have, I still found them a big part of my childhood. Because around in 2015 was the time where my obsession of video games was starting to fade away. And every time I completely try to get into new video games, it just wasn't enough to get me back into the zone. But on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that talking about these 20 video games instead of the modern video games is still an alternative choice, considering that modern video games are still the mainstream of today's standards. But on the other hand, I still think that the classical video games, mainly from the Nintendo Wii, the PlayStation 2, the first PlayStation, along with the Nintendo 64, all those systems from the past generations are one of the most important memories of my entire childhood. And I am thankful that I managed to play these video games when I got the chance. And unlike in my last video involving which video game is suitable when it comes to one video game per franchise, this list is going to require multiple games from that specific franchise in this list. So, since that this video is going to be longer twice or more than my video game endings, consider this mostly a gift for the third Summerpalooza, since I want to make this similar to the first and second. Let's not waste any more time, and here are my top 20 classical video games. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is one of the most underrated video games that I have played when I played it on the PlayStation 2 during my childhood. Granted, there are other PS2 games that are going to be appealing as this list continues, but to give this video game some credit, I actually enjoy of how original this video game is when it comes to its characters and the attacks that you use by throwing your boomerang towards other enemies, not to mention using them to glide them. And let's not forget that you can actually have multiple boomerangs by getting most of the collectibles in this video game. Admittedly, this game isn't as good when it comes to its flaws, but at the same time, the flaws I have with this game is mainly that this video game can get easily boring. But not in the boring of how the characters are and how the gameplay is. It's mainly the collectibles that you have to handle in this. Keep this in mind, the video games that are going to be appearing later on this list have improvements over the flaws from this game, but I will give this game credit that the character Ty is a much more likable character, and he actually is much more of a badass when he gets into combat with other characters, mainly the enemies. Let me just say that Ty is a really great character when you play as him, especially his dialogue. Granted, this isn't about the story, but at the same time, the characters can easily improve on the flaws of the video game. Literally, the only issues I have with the video game is that the bosses are mostly confusing to beat, mainly the second boss, because I had a difficult time on remembering of how I take the boss down, but then when I realized that it's mainly about throwing the flame-aways into something that you shouldn't have been using the entire time, this game can be a lot more forgettable when you use these types of elements into a game involving a person who throws his boomerangs towards enemies. I understand that's the premise of the video game, but considering the two sequels that came out after this video game made some kind of adjustments when it comes to the gameplay, the first installment of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is really underrated, but at the same time not good when it comes to playability. But I will say this though. The story is what dives me into this video game a lot more during my childhood. It's mainly of how Ty is getting himself into predicaments when it comes to the main antagonist boss Cass, and to give this game some credit, the gameplay is somewhat worth it. Sometimes it can be boring, but stories like Ty can easily dive me into most of the issues that the game has, mostly bypassing. And even if the gameplay can be a bit boring at times, there are other video games that actually made me bored to the point that I just didn't want to finish it up. Granted, Ty was one of the games that I wasn't able to finish because I just couldn't get into the gameplay that much, but to give this game some credit is that the story actually improved on most of the flaws. But then again, the later entries will make major improvements. This game may not be one of my favorite video games when it comes to top 10 or top 5, but I will say that I will never forget for the experience of what this game does when it comes to its story, and it actually made me forgive most of the gameplay issues that this video game has. I would make a review of this video game to talk about everything, but at the same time, gameplay, I need to record my own gameplay, and me getting other footage from other users isn't really accurate, even if I did play this video game.
Rated everyone. Attention, the fate of Volcano Island is in your hands. Become any one of your favorite Nicktoons heroes as you battle your way to victory. Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island, the video game. Available now.
I have somewhat of a mixed perspective on the Nicktoons games in the present day. Back in the 2000s, the Nicktoons were at its prime. Granted, SpongeBob were becoming much more mediocre, but when it comes to other cartoons like Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom, along with the Fairly Odd Parents, all join forces in a video game, Nicktoons Unite was basically a video game that we never expected Nicktoons to make. To the point that me and my brother were making storylines, not really storylines like story creators or anything, mainly our imagination of what Cartoon Network tunes are going to be like once they meet each other for the first time. But that was before Adventure Time, Steven Universe, regular show, and all those other future shows. So yeah, Nicktoons really did the biggest inspiration for me to do a huge crossover by having cartoons that I didn't get into that much when I was in childhood. And during the present day, Cartoon Network tunes in the 2000s, Cartoon Network had a terrible 2000s year. But getting to Battle for Volcano Island, one of the reasons why I picked this Nicktoons game over the last one, including the sequels afterwards, is because this game actually improves the flaws of what the original had. Because, let's be honest, the original had so many issues that it didn't feel like a true Nicktoons game. But in this game, with the main characters getting transported into a volcano island, and the fact that they're chosen ones, yes, an overdue trope that people are still using to this day, I actually found this a lot more interesting than just seeing the characters facing off their arch nemesis. Granted, that's probably one of the biggest upsides in the original Nicktoons game, but we actually get an original villain from this video game alone. So to give this video game some kind of credit, this game improves most of the issues from the original, and it carries those positives to the next two games. And I actually like the dynamic between Danny and SpongeBob, which, in the original, my brother would play Danny and I would play SpongeBob, and it's honestly a lot more bizarre to think that these two characters are mostly the main characters you will be playing throughout the entire game. Granted, you can't play Jimmy in this video game, and for some reason, Timmy only plays in one level, aside with his own level once you unlocked it. I still don't find those as major issues. Granted, it's a shame that you can't change characters and levels, but I can still give this video game some kind of credit to do something different compared to the original. Granted, no future projects will ever happen after Globs of Doom came out in 2008, but considering that Attack on the Power Juju had terrible ratings, and around this time, Jimmy Neutron and Danny Phantom are officially over, I'm pretty sure that calling that video game a SpongeBob video game actually sums up of what Nickelodeon has turned into after these somewhat golden age years. Granted, the golden age years may happen in the 1990s and the early 2000s, but I can say for a fact that the second half of the 2000s for Nickelodeon was a turn for better or worse. And let me just say that this video game really symbolizes of what Nickelodeon used to be when it comes to having variety and also interesting ideas. But at the same time, during the present day, Nickelodeon obviously is too obsessed with SpongeBob, and I gotta say, I really miss video games when it comes to having original style from a network that actually cares. Bottom line, I really enjoy this video game over the other Nicktoon games, and even though that this is lower on the list, that doesn't mean that this video game is mostly boring. It's a lot more entertaining than the last entry, and to give this game some kind of attention towards the new audience of Nickelodeon, I'm gonna say you're gonna be missing out some really great shows if you're gonna look at the present shows. Well, aside from the Loud House, but I don't watch the Loud House.
Rated T for teen.
This has been a hotly anticipated contest, and as far as I'm concerned, it's living up to the hype.
WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. How will you play?
Back during my childhood, I remembered watching WWE at an age where I'm not that old enough to get into the product, especially of how it was during the TV 14 era before everything changed into the TV PG. I gotta say, 2007 was a year where everything just was at its history, but at the same time, it was the last thing we saw from WWE when it comes to TV 14. Which is why I consider SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 as one of my favorite video games when it comes to classical video games. I know some of you guys have grew up with Here Comes the Pain along with the previous entries of WWE video games, but I've only played Shut Your Mouth, and to be quite honest, I really didn't enjoy Shut Your Mouth compared to this video game. And while I understand that people may find some debates on which wrestling game is superior, especially the ones that have overshadowed the most, people overshadowed Shut Your Mouth when Here Comes the Pain comes out, and I gotta say, 2008 has been overshadowed to the point that I'm actually ashamed. Not ashamed of the people who play the other video games. I completely appreciate you enjoying other video games over this, but what 2008 had was probably the last bit of some nostalgia, probably because of the original stage setups, and this is probably where most of the legends, mainly King Booker and other wrestlers, end up leaving in order to go to different wrestling companies, mainly to pursue different things. But that explains onto why this game is mostly important to me when it comes to wrestling video games. Other wrestling games in the future, mainly 2010 when they introduced Story Designer, along with 2K14 where they add so many things along with 30 years of WrestleMania, I would easily pick those in this list, but the thing is, I'm only picking video games that were at least 10 years old. And while 2010 may be a 10-year-old game, it still doesn't compete with what 2008 did when it comes to its originality. 2008 is still the final game to include GM mode over the last 14 years, and for people desperately wanting 2K to include GM mode, I'm pretty sure that my addiction to this GM mode really shows when I was playing this during my childhood. And even though that story design though is somewhat better than this because you can do a lot more when it comes to cutscenes and stuff, GM mode is basically something you would usually do on running a WWE show in the real world. I gotta say, WWE had so much variety, and the fact that 2009 didn't have this feature really shows how well GM mode is compared to today's standards of WWE video games. Admittedly, this video game isn't perfect by any means. I mean, 24/7 mode, it pretty much shows onto why they did Road to WrestleMania in the following games up until WWE 12 so that they can improve on the writing. And let me just say right now that the writing in this video game is really all over the place. With the introduction of ECW, along with somewhat changes when it comes to the events that occurred in WWE in 2007, this video game is mostly claustrophobic, but also all over the place when it comes to its story. But that's what I really miss. It had old elements from older video games, and in the newer video games, it just won't be the same, which is why I consider 2008 somewhat a big part of my childhood when it comes to WWE in general. This video game reminds me everything of what WWE used to be during the old days. And while the Attitude Era is probably where people got into WWE when it comes to making so many mistakes to take down WCW, I still consider the Ruthless Aggression Era the era where WWE has regained some kind of popularity. See all you want, but the thing is, not every wrestler will stay in the WWE, mainly The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Hulk Hogan, who moved into different places. I'm pretty sure that the Ruthless Aggression Era had its unique style and charm, which really made me admire of what 2008 is going for. Granted, the later entries may have improvements when it comes to its roster, but I gotta say, SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 really reminds me so much of how WWE used to be.
With over 100 new Pokemon in Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl, they're gonna be everywhere. Ready to catch, battle, and trade. Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl. Gotta catch 'em all. Only for Nintendo DS, rated E for everyone.
For any person who grew up with the Pokemon franchise in the 2000s, Pokemon Diamond was the first game I finished from beginning to end. I did the same with Pokemon Black, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Soul Silver, but the first game was always Pokemon Diamond. And even though I consider the third generation as my favorite when it comes to the Pokemon franchise, Generation 4 is actually a lot more nostalgia since I got this game when it was launched all the way back in 2007 with my brother game Pokemon Pearl. Even though I'm not the best at RPGs, Pokemon Diamond is mostly important to me because with this being the first Pokemon game I've played when it comes to completing it, not 100%ly, but still, it actually made me appreciate the franchise a lot more because all I ever did was watch the movies and mostly the anime. And every time I remember my memories of playing Pokemon Diamond, I've always memorized of what I enjoy for the style, not to mention the Pokemon that are included in this generation. Granted, people may debate on which generation is superior, and I prefer the third generation, but to give the fourth generation some credit, it made me impressed of what the franchise can do, especially improvements that they made in future generations. And as for the remixes, even though I'm not going to be able to play them because I don't have a Nintendo Switch, I am still looking forward to what people are going to feel when they finally get the remixes of Generation 4 after almost 15 years. Getting back to the original, I actually like the designs of the Pokemon in this game. Granted, I prefer the 3rd generation, but at the same time, to give this generation some kind of credit, the designs actually fit the world building in this generation, but just like every other generation. And the whale Pokemon, they're probably the best designed whale Pokemon I ever seen from any other generation. Granted, they're difficult to capture, especially Cresselia, but at the same time, I really give this video game mad props to make the designs of the Pokemon something to give this video game an identity. And just to point this out, the later generations do have an identity when it comes to its designs, but at the same time, it just didn't hook my interest. Overall, Pokemon Diamond will forever be the Pokemon game that is considered nostalgia for my taste. Even though that Pokemon Black and White are 10 years old, and that game may consider nostalgia, and it's a major improvement since that was on the same system as Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, I still just can't get into the new Pokemon designs, and as much as I tried to complete it, which I did, I won't forget of how Pokemon Diamond gave me the inspiration of what it feels to finish a Pokemon game from beginning to end. And considering I've enjoyed the Pokemon game better than the anime, that is saying a lot. I never played Mario Kart 64 on the Nintendo 64, but what I did play was other racing games. And if you saw the beginning of the video, you've already know that I played Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, but the other racing game that I've also played is Diddy Kong Racing, which is also the very first rail game I've ever played. For me personally, Diddy Kong Racing, it just never gets old for me, especially with how much the graphics were during the time this game was released in 1997. And what I actually enjoy from this video game the most is the fact that you can easily compare this to Mario Kart 64. I've played it to death on the N64 to the point I 100%ed on it. I've enjoyed every single track of it, not to mention that the gimmick of you driving in a cart or a hovercraft or a plane makes this game one of the best N64 games of all time. Let me just say right now that I never got tired of playing this game every time I go up north and play it upstairs. And considering that this game has a story mode which is rare in some racing games, that is actually much of an accomplishment to give Diddy Kong Racing more attention compared to other racing games. Granted, when it comes to realistic racing games, it's always debate on picking realistic over fantasy racing, but let me just say right now that I have never grown tired of Diddy Kong Racing, and with it being the only railroad game I played during that time, I really missed out a lot. But I was born in 1998, and my brothers were the ones who have been playing the N64 more than me when I got my hands on the N64 for the first time. And even though that there were other railroad games that are much more better than Diddy Kong Racing, I would still not discredit this video game whatsoever. Even though it's still low on the list, I am still not going to forget the memories I have playing with this video game, for its creativity and its qualities. Diddy Kong Racing is a game that you shouldn't miss if you're looking through retro games from the 5th generation of consoles. Even though that you can have better options when it comes to the PlayStation, but if you're an N64 final, then make sure to add this game to your collection, because you will not regret it once you play every bit of it. even though I never played the very first Pikmin game, and I played Pikmin 2 back in 2019 for the Wii, I still consider this as a classical video game that I've experienced involving Pikmin itself. Let me just say right now that Pikmin 2 means a lot more. It's actually one of the games I've wanted to get, but it was on the GameCube. And even though I do have a Wii that's compatible with GameCube games, I still need to get a controller along with a memory card, not to mention find a copy, which is really well defined these days. But when I got the chance to play this game in 2019 for the Wii version, I sucked at it, but I still enjoyed it, with its dungeons that didn't include in the last game, but also the following game, not to mention the new additions like the white and purple Pikmin. I really think that this game is a major improvement over the first Pikmin game, mainly for adding so many additions to the point that it actually gave Pikmin more of an identity than just mostly a launch title for the GameCube back in 2001. I will admit that this video game is cruel at times, but considering that the first Pikmin game was mostly a start for the franchise, I still think that Pikmin 2 is probably one of the most interesting challenges in any other video game when it comes to the 6th generation of video games. Regardless of how difficult it was for people to go through so many dungeons with so many sub-levels, but I will say that I actually found it probably the best bit of it. Granted, I've lost so many Pikmin and I had to reset the game multiple times to regain my progress, but let me just say this right now, I had so much fun by playing this game because if I pick the original over this, I would probably have less time in my hands to the point that it won't be worth it, which is why I picked this game over the first installment. The enemies in this game, even though they're mostly difficult to defeat, I still found them probably the best highlight in this game, mainly for the weaknesses it has, not to mention that you can easily take them down with the Pikmin, especially the purple ones, which is really satisfying, and with them being placed into a dungeon where you have to protect so many Pikmin but also use them to your advantage, this game really knows how to make a huge balance, but at the same time, make the difficulty level a lot more higher. I doubt that we're going to see this style of gameplay from Pikmin 2 again when it comes to the 4th installment, if there is going to be one, by how long the development process is. I am still fine by replaying this game when I get the chance. Even though if I played this game once, I can still go back to it, and it's been like 2 years, so I'm pretty sure that in the following year or after that, I'll get back to replaying this video game. By the way, if anyone's going to mention, I never had a problem with the Wild Wave because it was a lot more simple once you keep your Pikmin a lot more safer, not to mention try to keep them into a safer spot, which no other person did when it comes to the first playthrough. And consider I did that in my first playthrough, I really know the weaknesses in one of the worst parts of this video game.
I'm not a sore loser, because I just won the game. What?
Tag is back. Faster, braver, stronger. Tag 2, The Staff of Dreams, the video game.
Tag 2 The Staff of Dreams is always superior compared to the original, along with its sequel, The Great Juju Challenge. Even though that some games are easily overshadowed when it comes to the 6th generation, especially the current generation, it's mostly because the technology, especially the Wi-Fi, the internet, just isn't as really mainstream as it is in today's standards. But to give Tag 2 the credit it deserves, I'm pretty sure that if this game happened in the present day, it would probably get more recognition than what it did back in 2004. Granted, the game is fine as it is despite with so many glitches, but on the other hand, replaying this game from beginning to end and being completely different compared to the first Tag game Tag to the Staff of Dreams is the prime example of doing a sequel by doing different things. But then again, that's what a sequel should do instead of just rehashing the same ideas as before. Let me get this out of the way. The Dream World in Tag 2 is what makes this game probably the best when it comes to its world building. In the first game's world building, it wasn't much, but then again, it was the first time they did this, so they will make major improvements in the second game. But if the Dream World never happened in Tag 2, then Tag 2 will probably be mostly a rehash of the first Tag game. And let me just say right now that when you do different ideas and use those ideas for sequels, you know you can make a better game when it comes to being better than the predecessor. I really admire the story in this, but I've already mentioned that in my top 10 endings, well, I ranked Tag 2 as my 10th favorite ending out of any of the endings. But then again, people have debates on the ending being mostly all of a dream, so less said, the better. I will say that the characters in this, which I haven't been mentioning since this video has begun, well, aside from the very first entry, I will say that these characters make a major improvement over the predecessor for how they were developed, especially Tack. And considering of how much that the show really flanderizes his character to be mostly immature, him being way more mature in this video game, I really didn't know what Nickelodeon was thinking, but then again, they probably need to do a reboot at sorts. But let me just say this right now, that the Staff of Dreams really reminds me of how good Nickelodeon does when it comes to its video games when it's not based off of their cartoon characters. But then again, I'm going to correct myself in the next entry. But I will say that they actually know how to give some kind of respect when it comes to making their own original IPs in video games. And when you completely take into the fact that the cartoon characters are good when it comes to its own thing, Tech would have been better off if it was just mostly a video game franchise. But due to the studio working on with different projects after the release of the Great Juju Challenge, I guess Nickelodeon had to do what they could. But I will give them credit to give these three games some kind of attention when it comes to their unique style. Because let me just say this right now, without Tech 2, the Tech series will probably be just like every other video game franchise out in the open. Granted, that's not really fair to compare with other video game franchises that deserve some attention, but for every passing year, there's always going to be new games that can easily overshadow the games from yesteryear. So, I'm pretty sure that no matter what happens, it's always a lose-lose situation, which is mostly a shame, but on the other hand, years later, a game franchise will definitely get a cult following regardless. Granted, it's going to take time for Attack 2 to get a little bit more recognition, but with the many videos I've seen involving the Attack trilogy, the Tag series is pretty much alright for what it has to offer when it comes to its fanbase. And the best game out of the trilogy will always be Tag 2. And even though that it may have glitches and I won't be able to get into the video game that much when it comes to the future entries, I still think that this game is still worth playing at least once. You can skip the first entry, which is the original, the Power of Juju, especially the Great Juju Challenge, unless if you want to have a friend to play with you. But I'm pretty sure that you will not regret on playing this game for your first try. Because let me just say, every game deserves a chance regardless. Granted, it will take time for you to give an opinion on it, but take your time and you will enjoy Tag 2 just like everyone else. When I was obsessed watching SpongeBob during my childhood, I played Battle for Bikini Bottom more than the tie-in movie game, Lights, Camera, Pants, Creature from the Krusty Krab, Atlantis Square Pantis, and Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. SpongeBob in the early 2000s was probably the best time to become a SpongeBob fan in the franchise, and Battle for Bikini Bottom is a gift from Nickelodeon, who actually cared about quality in cartoons. All I can say is that Battle for Bikini Bottom is the perfect definition of a fan service video game. For each location you go to, it is all based from the episodes from the show. Goo Lagoon, Rock Bottom, Kelp Forest, you name it. Everything that happened from the 3 seasons of SpongeBob is easily accessible, and that is something that really makes this game a lot more memorable. But as for the story involving Plankton about to take over the world as usual, but then it ends up backfiring on him, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Sandy need to save Bikini Bottom from robotic destruction. It's actually clever that a studio with a popular cartoon ends up getting a video game with an interesting plot that actually makes sense of what the main characters need to go through in order to save the whole city from, like I said, robotic destruction. All I can say is that this is the charm that I actually enjoy from SpongeBob the most. Granted, I don't enjoy the charm during the present day, but on the other hand, I can give this video game a lot more credit for what they can do when it comes to its gameplay. For each character you play, whether if it's SpongeBob, Patrick, or Sandy, they always have unique qualities that can make Battle for Bikini Bottom the best SpongeBob game ever made. And with this being the collectible game as well, I didn't collect all the golden spatulas, but on the other hand, it's a lot more challenging to collect everything in this video game, which is something that it does when it comes to making major improvements over original games from the past. And even though that those original games may be better than Battle for Bikini Bottom, for at least in my opinion, I can still give SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom the benefit of the doubt, because for what it has to offer, it's basically a SpongeBob video game fan service for everyone, and it really makes sense onto why new developers decide to remake the game, which is the rehydrated version for the PS4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. And when a video game is based off of a cartoon gets a remake 17 years later, that is somewhat of an accomplishment of what Battle for Bikini Bottom does for the SpongeBob fanbase. And let me just say right now, any other SpongeBob game that I've played, they still do not compare to Battle for Bikini Bottom. So I do appreciate SpongeBob at times when it comes to good qualities like Battle for Bikini Bottom. And let me just say right now, even if I'm not going to play Rehydrated, I will still remember that I still have the copy of the original for the PlayStation 2, so I will be able to replay this game whenever I'm back into the mood to take down robots. In the beginning of 2015 is where my obsession of video games was starting to fade in the later months. And I gotta say, that year was mostly a different time for me, considering that me playing video games so much, well, I get easily burned out, and every time I get back to an old video game, it just never changes afterwards to get back to another game. 2015 was really the year where I changed the most when it comes to my hobbies. But in January of that year, I bought the Wii U, and the reason why I bought it is because of one video game. I only bought 4 video games: Super Smash Bros. 4, Mario Kart 8, and Nintendo Land. But the main video game I wanted to get for the Wii U was The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker HD. And let me just say right now, I am thankful that I managed to play this game before my obsession of video games was starting to fade, because this was the only video game I ever wanted since 2010 when I watched videos of it. But considering that GameCube games weren't selling like they were before during the time where the Xbox 360, PS3, and Nintendo Wii are literally the only systems that are mostly selling at that moment. It was then I learned that a lot just can't be the same all the time. And I'm actually kind of thankful that when Wind Waker is getting a remake for the Wii U, it was my only chance to play that video game before it's too late. Even though that this isn't my favorite Zelda game when it comes to the later entries on this list, I am still amazed of how this video game can stand as a Zelda game on its own. Mainly the Great Sea that you ride the King of Red Lions to your next destination, along with multiple characters that have great expressions, and I did mention 2 years ago you can't underestimate the cuteness of Toon Link. Not to mention that the story in this is probably much more bigger scale compared to other Zelda games. Granted, when it comes to the later entries, they can top this, but on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that Wind Waker can easily be stand as its own normal Zelda game, regardless of the backlash it received when it comes to its graphics. But that's one of the prime examples onto why I wanted to play this video game. Even though that I'm playing the HD remake, the graphics, when it comes to the shell-shaded characters, I really think that they really know how to make Zelda a lot more different when it comes to a different animation style. This is the game that came out after the N64 game, so you can really tell that the graphics are going to be much more improving when it comes to the GameCube system. Granted, the Wii U system is a lot more better than the GameCube, but on the other hand, I actually think that no matter what system you play it on when it comes to improvements, the graphics of Wind Waker is the biggest highlight in this video game. Granted, mostly can't debate on the gameplay and story along with the characters, but again, debates are always debates. But I'm pretty sure that Wind Waker is one of those games that you wanted to play back then, but as of now, when it's not selling and it's mostly expensive on websites, it really shows onto why Wind Waker is a true underrated gem when it comes to GameCube titles. I can say that other Zelda games can be superior to this, but I can still consider Wind Waker its own thing when it comes to its style, its decisions, not to mention the many things you can do, especially that this was before Breath of the Wild map. Well, Breath of the Wild is way more bigger, like 10 times bigger than the map or Great Sea of Wind Waker. I gotta say, Wind Waker had a streak until 2017 when it comes to the largest map in Zelda history. And even though that I admit that doing this video game 100% is a lot more complicated when it comes to audio Zelda games, it's mostly a step up for what the audio titles did when it comes to improvements in 3D Zelda. And Wind Waker really proves that they can easily do a lot more than just a world, which is the Great Sea, and going to different islands and doing different side quests along the way. And I gotta say, watching this back in 2010, it's really worth it, especially playing this for the first time in 2015. It's just a shame that it came at a point where my obsession of video games was starting to go away, but on the other hand, I managed to play it just in time to get that experience. Regardless if there are other Zelda games that are much more better than this, I am still amazed at what Wind Waker had to offer, even though that I've watched a Let's Play of it 11 years ago. And I gotta say, those were the times where I really love Wind Waker. And even though that I don't consider this as my favorite Zelda game, I still consider it as the most underrated Zelda game of all time. It's really hard to believe that the Battlefront series from Star Wars has much of a cult following than anything when it comes to how the gameplay is executed, not to mention the variety it has to offer, and the remixes on the current systems. Granted, people make debates on what you feel about the EA games involving Star Wars. I did play them, but on the other hand, considering that they were at a time where, let's just say that Star Wars was starting to change for the worst, I can say that the originals from 2004 and 2005 were the best, and the best out of the two was the second installment. When Battlefront 2 came out at the end of 2005, the same year while Revenge of the Sith came out, it was the best Star Wars game of all time. Well, granted, I would prefer Star Wars Episode 1 way so, but I can guarantee you that people will probably attack me if I prefer that game over this. But every time I play Battlefront 2, it really reminds us of how Battlefront 2 is like when you completely enter into a Star Wars world when it comes to the clones facing off the droids, or the original trilogy when it comes to the Old Republic against the Empire. It's one of those memories you really remember the most when you watch the 6th movies, and we're playing these characters trying to save freedom or completely take down in order to take over the galaxy is by far the best things you would easily do if you ever want to play a Star Wars game. Any planet that is included in Battlefront 2, which includes the Episode 3 planets, is where Star Wars has gone so much higher to the point that there is nothing that can be better than Star Wars by this point. Granted, other sci-fi series may beg to differ when it comes to their fan bases, but let's admit it. 2005 was easily the year of Star Wars. Well, the final episode, well, not technically final episode, but the final episode that hasn't been released, Episode 3, was on its way. And then we get this video game. The 501st mode is probably something that didn't happen in the original, mainly the fact that the original is always a work in progress. And then when it comes to sequels, they know how to up their game when it comes to this 501st mode. Doing different missions compared to taking down the enemy's soldiers makes Battlefront 2 a true sequel compared to the first game. Not to mention you can either play as a Jedi, Sith, or one of your favorite shooters from the original and prequel trilogy, mainly Han Solo, just to name one of those characters. This video game is basically a Star Wars fan service game come true. Regardless of what people may think of Star Wars at the present day, people will never forget of what the original trilogy along with the prequel trilogy can do when it comes to making Star Wars more important other than just being what Disney turned Star Wars into in the present day. And when I compare an old Star Wars game to the recent movies like The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, it really shows that Star Wars just hasn't been the same in the present time, not to mention recover since this decade began. Video games from the 20th to the 11th entry on this list, even if they're not my most favorite games when it comes to top 10 material, I still consider them a place in my heart because of the childhood that these games gave me. And when I talk about people's childhood involving Star Wars during the 2000s and comparing their adulthood into the present day of Star Wars, Battlefront 2 wouldn't make Star Wars a contributing factor in any other franchise because this video game got me interested into the original trilogy when I was a prequel trilogy fan during that time. And as much as I really felt ashamed of how Star Wars has fallen from grace since The Last Jedi came out, I will still not forget the childhood that it gave me, and it's mostly from this video game. And since that we're entering into the top 10s list, be prepared for one of my favorite video games that are considered a major factor in my interest in video games.
We would like to play.
Introducing the ultimate Wii Throwdown. Gather your friends, invite the whole family as the biggest characters in gaming history come together for the brawl to end them all. Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Rated T for teen.
Super Smash Bros. Brawl was the game that got me interested into so many video game franchises. Mario, Yoshi, Olimar, so many other Nintendo characters that really got me interested into video games a lot more back when I got this game on my 12th birthday back in 2010. I've enjoyed playing almost every single character in this video game. Granted, I had issues, but considering that this game has a story mode, which I'll get to soon, I can easily be mostly capable into handling any character I play, whether it's facing off with a different friend or completely competing online. Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a major improvement over the last two installments, the N64 game and Melee. I've played this game so much when I got my hands on it back in 2010, and even if I didn't 100% complete it on it, mainly the fact that the last objective for me was to play this game 100 hours, which I didn't have any friends to come over during that time, I really gave up on 100%ing it. But doing most of the objectives like Classic Mode, All-Star Mode, or just a free-for-all, Super Smash Bros. Brawl had it all, and it made me appreciate Nintendo as a company compared to other companies that I played those systems, like the PlayStation 2. And the addition of Subspace Emissary in this video game, Super Smash Bros. Brawl had it all. I can't even describe of how much that this video game made me in love with the Nintendo franchise a lot more compared to me enjoying the N64. 2010 was definitely a year where it's mainly about Nintendo, and other video games mainly from the PlayStation 2, which is a system that I still had. I didn't have PS3 on Xbox 360. I'm really thankful that the Nintendo Wii gave me a childhood the most. And let me just say right now that there's gonna be more Nintendo Wii games as this list continues. All in all, without Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I wouldn't be this invested with other Nintendo franchises. Granted, I didn't play all of them, and even if I played Zelda before this, it still wouldn't make any difference. Because I wouldn't be a Mario fan if I didn't play Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is why I consider this as my 10th favorite video game when it comes to classical video games.
Not just Sonic, Team Sonic. Sonic Heroes, rated everyone, now on Nintendo GameCube.
I have never played the adventure video games whatsoever when it comes to Sonic 3D. I did play the Mega Collection involving the first 3 Sonic games, but whenever I think about Sonic in 3D, I don't immediately think of Adventure 1 or 2, because I never played those games. And even if I wanted to play those games, like every other entry that I've talked about, they're still well to find when it comes to finding a Dreamcast copy or a GameCube copy. But the very first Sonic 3D game I ever played, aside from 3D Blast for the Genesis, is Sonic Heroes. The fact that I played the Mega Collection involving the classic video games from the early 90s before I got into Sonic Heroes, I had somewhat of a really lucky childhood to play these Sonic games before I got into 3D Sonic. Granted, Adventure 1 or 2 is a completely different story, but every time I think about Sonic Heroes, this video game did a lot more, regardless of playing this video game's story for 4 times when it comes to different teams, along with the Chaos Emeralds getting difficult to get because of how terrible the special stages are. I still have great memories involving Sonic Heroes because it still reminds me of classic Sonic games, which this video game is trying to take inspiration, since that it doesn't want to be as similar as Adventure 2. This game caught me the interest of so many Sonic characters. I have remembered Knuckles and Tails, but with the additions of Shadow, Rouge, Omega, Amy, Cream, Big the Cat, no offense but I actually enjoy him, along with Team Chaotix, this game got me into the Sonic fanbase a lot more when it comes to these new addition of characters. And this was at a time where I've got into the Sonic X series along with the Saturday AM series. And if that really isn't much enough to consider of how much I enjoy Sonic during my childhood, then I'm pretty much sure that without this video game, I might be able to consider on skipping Sonic regardless. Because the only thing I'm just going to remember the most from Sonic is the classic video games. Consisting the Genesis games involving the first 3 Sonic games, I gotta admit, the Genesis games actually got me an introduction involving the 2D gameplay, but if I was born before 1998 and played video games from the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis, I will probably have a difficult time being adjusted into those video games. But like what some people say on YouTube, people just don't get into the video games when older people got into older video games. That's just basically what they experience more than me. So playing this video game with the introduction of Sonic the Hedgehog was way more different compared to playing the Genesis games, but I will admit that Sonic Heroes did a lot more when it comes to its story, despite being cheesy, along with the amount of characters it has to offer, even if you only play 3 per team. I've enjoyed every single stage from this video game, and even if there may be some issues when it comes to the mechanics and the collision detection, I was able to get accustomed to it, which I played the PS2 version and not the GameCube version. But on the other hand, I managed to get past those issues whatsoever, since I actually got adjusted when it comes to the gameplay. I may didn't 100% on completing Sonic Heroes, but I actually enjoy the style of what this game is trying to do compared to Adventures 1 and 2. It may be odd that my interest towards Sonic the Hedgehog is a lot more different compared to those people's perspectives when they played Sonic for the first time, and the fact that I played Sonic Unleashed for the PS2, it didn't make any difference regardless. My nostalgia memories of Sonic the Hedgehog will always be from Sonic Heroes nonetheless, and I actually fell in love with the series because of Sonic Heroes. Say all you want, but I did play the other video games, and I will say that one of the Sonic games is better than this, but we'll get to that as this list continues. I could have gotten into Sonic a lot more if I did play the Adventure series, but aside of me missing out those games, I still managed to have some kind of nostalgic memories involving Sonic Heroes. Ever since I got Mario Kart Wii on my 13th birthday back in 2011, just like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I was obsessed with it, to the point that, aside from Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, it was one of my favorite racing games ever made. Granted, I consider that other Mario games, especially later on in this list, can be much more better than Mario Kart Wii when it comes to mainstream Mario games. I won't dishonor Mario Kart Wii whatsoever. It was at this point that my interest in Mario games has gone higher and higher. Granted, during my teenage years when I turned into a teenager back in 2011, there was still a lot more that I just couldn't be able to do, like play the original Mario games. I did play the retro Mario games as part of the retro collection from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where you only play for a few minutes, but Compared to playing Mario Kart Wii while playing the retro tracks along with the Wii tracks, Mario Kart Wii had it all, and it was enough for me to actually find so much enjoyment to play this game with so many friends at a friend's house. Well, technically, it was mostly my brother's friend's house, but at the same time, I still played this game with so many friends when it comes to 4-player multiplayer. But putting that aside, I played this game online against so many people all over the world, and it never got old. Granted, I lost so many points when it comes to me using, but that was mostly the charm of my childhood when I played a video game online for the very first time. And considering that it's been so many years since I last played this game, and it came to the point that this game is being modded by so many people in the Mario fanbase, I'm really missing out a lot, but at the same time, I'd rather watch from the sidelines regardless. Because let's be real, I haven't played this game in a long time, and I'm not that of an expert against pros who are extremely talented playing Mario Kart Wii when it comes to playing GameCube controllers or just the Wii wheel, and it's gonna be a more difficult time to fit into so many people who are so in love with Mario Kart Wii since it was released all the way back in 2008. But moving past that, Mario Kart Wii is one of my most favorite Mario games of all time. Every time I play this during my childhood, it never gets old, and even if I don't play as much during the present day, it really doesn't affect me that much. Besides, when I first played Mario Kart 8 the first time, I can understand it's not trying to be the same as Mario Kart Wii, but at the same time, it just wasn't enough. And when it comes to Mario Kart 7, I did enjoy playing Mario Kart when it comes to portable reasons, but at the same time, it still doesn't compare to Mario Kart Wii regardless. So, every time I consider Mario as one of my favorite franchises, Mario Kart Wii is always in the mind, but there's another Mario game that is superior to this as this list continues, and I gotta stop saying that because that is getting really, really annoying by this point. Even if I only played it last year in 2020, which was, at the time, it was one of the hardest video games to find an N64 copy involving the main mascot of WarWare, Banjo-Kazooie was mostly the last video game, or at least for me to play when it comes to classical reasons. I can guarantee you that aside from Diddy Kong Racing, this was the very first game that is considered a WarWare game when it comes to platforming. I know me addressing that Diddy Kong Racing isn't really much of a WarWare game because it's not a platformer, which is mostly harsh, but the thing is, it was the only WarWare game I ever played, and it was just a racing game. It wasn't a platformer game. And considering that Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong 64 are literally the only two WarWare games that I never played that involves actual platforming, I didn't understand what it feels to play an actual WarWare game for the very first time. It is mostly debate on you saying that Diddy Kong Racing is still fine as it is, but I want to experience a WarWare game that is considered a platforming game than anything else when it comes to the library of N64 games. This video game succeeded my expectations when I played it the first time last year. Every single level, along with its music, is one of the best highlights in the entire game, and even though that it's difficult to control Banjo and Kazooie the very first time, I was able to get accustomed to it, to the point that I actually consider this gameplay style the best when it comes to other platforming games. Mainly at the fact that this game took inspiration from Super Mario 64 and turned that platforming into its own thing. Banjo-Kazooie is those games that you really want to play, but at the same time, you can't even tell the difference of what a true platformer really is. Granted, this video game overshadowed other video games in the future, mainly the tech series, among others, but the thing is, without Banjo-Kazooie, we won't probably see a lot of inspiration when it comes to other video games. Granted, Super Mario 64 may be mostly the inspiration when it comes to 3D games, but 3D games have been a thing before Super Mario 64 came out, so Super Mario 64 was never the very first 3D game ever made. But getting back to Banjo-Kazooie, every time I played this game last year during the whole pandemic situation, I adored every bit of it. Granted, there are so many issues that I have when it comes to the modes, especially the final level before the final boss. Seriously, the trivia game is probably the worst bit in this entire video game. It still didn't stop me on seeing so many extraordinary things in Banjo-Kazooie. The characters, the dialogue, not to mention the story in this video game. Literally, the collectibles in this pretty much shows how original Banjo-Kazooie is compared to Super Mario 64. It screams Rare charm, and the formula that Rare did while making this game really proves that after so many years, newcomers will easily be invested in this great game. Every time I see Kazooie fly with Banjo hanging from underneath, it reminds me everything of what Rare did. Looking through every single level while flying, well granted you can't fly everywhere in every single level, but still, while seeing the detail that they did during the Prime years, I'm pretty sure that we're never going to see another Banjo-Kazooie style game in the future. Aside with the sequel Banjo-Tooie, Banjo-Kazooie were under the wrong hands since that Microsoft bought Rare from Nintendo. I'm not gonna go into deep into the whole thing because at this point it's getting really repetitive every time I mention those times in a top 10s video or a top 20s video. Anyway, Banjo-Kazooie is truly a one-of-a-kind game, and if you're trying to find one of the best N64 games, buy this game along with Banjo-Tooie if you manage to find copies in stores these days. You won't regret it, because once I played this game from beginning to end, despite some of its issues, I will have no problem playing this video game again in the future. Picking which Ratchet & Clank game as the best game involving the PlayStation 2 era games is mostly complicated. You have Ratchet & Clank 1, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, Ratchet & Clank Up Your Arsenal, which fans of the franchise consider the best game, and Ratchet Deadlock, which is mostly a spin-off, but also a sequel towards Up Your Arsenal. But my favorite game out of any of the 4 Ratchet & Clank games is Going Commando. Aside of my statement about a sequel being superior to the predecessor, Going Commando takes the story into a different direction compared to the predecessor, mainly of Ratchet & Clank Going Commando working for Megacorp, not to mention that we get so many interesting enemies that are much more difficult to face, making this one of the most difficult Ratchet & Clank games of all time. And we should never forget that this is the first game where you upgrade a weapon for the first time after maxing out, while in the previous you couldn't aside of buying gold weapons during your second playthrough. This video game reminds me a lot of how Ratchet & Clank improved when it comes to the present days. Well, we get the latest Ratchet & Clank game. Ratchet still has the same voice actor that he had, James Arnold Taylor, from this video game in general, and the story in this is a huge upgrade compared to the previous, and for everything that the later games, which includes Up Your Arsenal and Deadlock, made major improvements, I think that they actually took inspiration on the difficulty, but also the optional content from this video game alone. Ratchet & Clank would have been much more different if it took a different route without going commando happening. And even though that there are so many ways to make the future Ratchet & Clank games a lot more different compared to the PS2 era of Ratchet & Clank games, I'm pretty sure that they still took inspiration from the PS2 games, mainly of what Going Commando introduced to the franchise. And with Rift Apart being released for the PlayStation 5 2 months ago, I am really curious if that game took inspiration from the second Ratchet & Clank game. Granted, you can say that they took inspiration from the future Ratchet & Clank games, but when it comes to those video games compared to the second Ratchet & Clank game, they took different ideals and different works to make a different type of video game involving Ratchet & Clank. And you can't just do the same thing over and over again, otherwise it would easily become more redundant than anything. But at the same time, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando really improved a lot when it comes to the franchise. And with this game becoming 18 years old once we enter November of this year, you should really appreciate what Going Commando does for the franchise. Granted, you could say that the first Ratchet & Clank game is one of your favorites, but I'm pretty sure that any sequel, regardless of how different and it let out some features from the original, they still do new things that can easily improve the franchise as the series continues. Which is why I consider Ratchet & Clank Going Commando my favorite Ratchet & Clank game in the franchise. However, I will never deny that this video game can be way too hard at times, not to mention the 100% completion on unlocking the Zombiac Museum by doing all the skill points along with getting all the platinum bolts can be time consuming and tedious, but if you handle all that in the processor, then you can handle all that in Going Commando despite the difficulty level. You won't believe I've played Ocarina of Time for about 20 times, while also 100%ing with the majority of the side quests and heart pieces. That really shows onto why this video game is number 5 of one of my favorite games when it comes to classical video games. Ocarina of Time being the very first Zelda game in 3D, was also the first Zelda game I ever played that involved a Nintendo franchise. So yeah, before Mario, before Pokemon, before anything else, Zelda was the very first franchise that I got into involving Nintendo. And considering that this was before Wind Waker and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, my childhood, despite being a little bit more limited when it comes to Nintendo games, I am really amazed on the fact that Ocarina of Time reminds me a lot of how Zelda was back then. Granted, it was literally the only Zelda game I ever played, aside from Link to the Past, which is on the Game Boy Advance, but aside from that, Ocarina of Time, no matter how many times I will play it, it never gets old. Now, I understand that there are other Zelda games in the future that are much more better than the Ocarina of Time, with them having better storytelling along with better music, and not to mention that they're in much more advanced hardware compared to the N64, but let me just say this right now, Ocarina of Time seems like one of those 3D games that were way ahead in their time, which is really difficult to think considering that other 3D games, when it comes to their first ever step into the third dimension, takes time to get used to, but I can say that Ocarina of Time is one of the rarest games that were ahead at the time of 3D back in the 1990s. When Nintendo had the limitations to make this game, they put the limitations to the test to make this game a major improvement over Link to the Past. Now, I did play Link to the Past for the Game Boy Advance, and even if I didn't 100% on it, I can easily tell the differences of what people enjoy from that game compared to Ocarina of Time. But even with that, Ocarina of Time has better gameplay when it comes to it being the first 3D Zelda game. The story of it is a lot more complex since that you can actually see the cutscenes in 3D instead of 2D, not to mention the many things that you can do in this game compared to Link to the Past. And Ganondorf in this game really makes his evil presence probably one of the best villains in any other Nintendo game. I can say that some people may debate on which Ganondorf they prefer the most, since that Ganondorf did appear in Wind Waker, but let me just say right now, I'm pretty sure that his presence in Ocarina of Time really gives you an impression of what of a true threat he really is. Yes, I did see bits and pieces involving him in Link to the Past, but considering that it was in a 16-bit console and this is a 64-bit console, they really upped the game to make Ganondorf a lot more different compared to what he was in the original games. Every time I think about Ocarina of Time, no matter what people think about the other Zelda games, I can say for a fact that they will always remember Ocarina of Time as the 3D Zelda platforming that started it all. And even if the future entries involving Zelda get major improvements, I will never forget what Ocarina of Time did, since it was actually the very first Nintendo game that I ever played. And let me just say right now, it's really amazing to consider that Ocarina of Time has aged so much over these last 23 years. If I'm ever going to come across someone who never played Zelda before and they ask me on which game that they should play first, it would definitely be Ocarina of Time. Regardless of the previous and future games, if they play those games, mainly the future ones, they will never understand how Zelda got popular when it comes to 3D gameplay. And if they miss out Ocarina of Time, they don't know what they're missing. Regardless if the future entries got major improvements over Ocarina of Time, they should remember what Ocarina of Time did for the franchise in general, because without Ocarina of Time, we will never get any of the future Zelda games in 3D. If you actually thought that I was going to be putting the PS2 version on this list and not the Xbox 360 version, then you pretty much know that my childhood involving Sonic wasn't really the same when it comes to everyone else's, since I've mentioned that in my Sonic Heroes rant. So, in 2018, I decided to buy Sonic Unleashed, and around that time, the game was 10 years old, which is actually a good way to play the Xbox 360 game when I got the chance. And let me just say right now, it was totally worth it. Sonic Unleashed is one of my most favorite Sonic games, considering of how old this game is. This game is nearly 13 years old and is still the best looking Sonic game, not to mention the best Sonic game to play involving its creativity and ideas. And considering that this was the last longest Sonic game, while Sonic Colors, Generations, and Lost Worlds and Forces ended up being the shorter Sonic games, 2008 was definitely the year of redemption for Sonic the Hedgehog. And with the addition of the Werehog stages in this video game, people have been criticizing the Werehog ever since this game came out in 2008, and if you're gonna say that the gameplay involving the Werehog is really unneeded, then you really haven't paid attention to what the story is mainly about. I would talk about the story, but I've already mentioned about that in my endings video. I ranked Sonic Unleashed as one of the best endings at number 2. So, to be perfectly honest, the Werehog stages are still fun, but at the same time, the hate of it is really ridiculous. I mean, I can understand people's complaints of the Sonic 06 gameplay for being rushed and the gameplay styles were all over the place where you had to play as 9 characters, but with this game coming out after Sonic 06 and they want to make some kind of improvements over the disaster, then you really shouldn't go too hard on the whole Werehog thing, because as much as I didn't have an issue with the Werehog, even in the PS2 version, I can easily tell onto why they would still make Sonic a Werehog during nighttime. And whenever you completely ignore the story and just focus on the gameplay, it just really shows that Sonic 06 really has everything that comes in the way while you completely ignore the positives of Sonic Unleashed. Trust me, you have no idea what the Sonic fanbase is when they talk about the criticisms that are mostly invalid in this video game. But getting back to the positives, literally playing the Xbox 360 game over the PlayStation 2 game is probably the better choice. Granted, I played the PS2 game at the time while Sonic Unleashed was new, but after playing the Xbox 360 game, Sonic Unleashed really proves that it needs to be on a high-definition console to stand out on its own. And every time I play each stage of the PS3 or Xbox 360 version, it's the perfect definition of an improvement of 3D Sonic. I know I've mentioned that Sonic Heroes was the very first 3D Sonic game, but considering that people have been addressing that 3D Sonic doesn't work whatsoever when it comes to the third dimension, and every time I hear that, sometimes I agree, but this argument has been done to death nearly 15 years since 06 came out. When you completely look at Sonic Forces, which is still the latest mainstream Sonic game, it really didn't age well even after almost 4 years. Mainly the fact that the stages were shorter and the boosting formula, despite doing some tweaks, it doesn't even improve the gameplay whatsoever. And considering it was on the PS4 and Xbox One, while Sonic Unleashed was on the PS3 and Xbox 360, Sonic Unleashed has aged so much while Sonic Forces is mostly the opposite. And these two games were 9 years apart when it comes to releasing. Yes, I will admit that Sonic Unleashed is not a perfect game and it has flaws like the quick time events, the Werehog battle music that keeps playing constantly every time you face off an enemy, and the Tails minigame where you had to play the quick time events constantly, which I had a difficult time getting to Spagonia in the Xbox 360 version, but aside from those, this game really aged a lot more compared to the future games, mainly the fact that it was original when it was released. And when something is really original, when it does something new for the first time, and the fact that people are condoning the speed formula constantly in later games, I'm pretty sure that doing a different formula wouldn't kill a future Sonic game whatsoever. Lost Worlds did it, and even if it wasn't a perfect game, it was still a decent game as it is. Besides, for how the Sonic franchise is as of right now, with the movie coming out last year, the video games didn't do much to improve the franchise aside from Team Sonic Racing. You can say that Colors and Generations are improvements, but let's be real, they still took inspiration from Sonic Unleashed, and whenever you completely take inspiration from Sonic Unleashed and the fact that you didn't give Unleashed any credit for its originality, then I'm pretty sure that Colors and Generations are sometimes a little overrated. I mean, I can understand people enjoying them, but considering I had a hard time playing Colors and Generations is mostly like Unleashed when it comes to the modern Sonic gameplay, then it really shows how much Generations and Colors have overshadowed Unleashed even to this day. which is why I prefer Unleashed over those games, mainly the fact that there is so much quality it has when it comes to its story and gameplay. And the speed is much more faster compared to Generations, but this is probably redemption on the fact that Sonic was so slow in 06. All in all, Sonic Unleashed is truly one of the best Sonic games, regardless of what people feel when it comes to their opinions on Sonic games. No matter how old this video game is, and even if the 9th generation of video game consoles may improve 3D Sonic if they know how to put something interesting to the table, we should always remember Sonic Unleashed as the redemption game that fixed everything, because without it, I'm pretty sure that Sonic wouldn't be around at this point. And I'm pretty sure that's the biggest success involving Sonic Unleashed. After playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, literally the very first 3D Mario game I ever played was Super Mario Galaxy. And let me just say right now, getting this game at Christmas of 2010 is one of the best video games I have ever played, mainly the fact that it's a major step up compared to Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine. I've adored Galaxy so much that even to this day, it is still one of my most favorite Mario games of all time. Nearly every single Galaxy in this game is way more original, not to mention probably the best visual even for the Wii, and the fact that Nintendo managed to make this game a lot more different compared to Sunshine and 64 is much of an accomplishment of how original Nintendo is when it comes to 3D Mario. Every time I think of Mario Galaxy when it comes to its levels, story, not to mention lovable characters, it reminds me how much Mario really is the mainstream of Nintendo. I was still into Zelda to the point that Zelda is still my favorite Nintendo franchise, but I will never ever forget anything involving Mario, not to mention laying them out any of the positives that Nintendo did when it comes to its systems and video games. And Galaxy really proves it. While yes, I'm fully aware that there are other spin-offs involving Mario, Mario Party, Mario Kart, Paper Mario, and the sports games, but considering that Galaxy is the step up involving Mario when it comes to 3D format, and the fact that there hasn't been a single 3D Mario game that is considered bad, this is like Unleashed, except that it's not about redemption. It's about major improvements to make Mario stand out as a major franchise. If we just had a simple Mario sequel after Sunshine and 64, along with making the presence of this game and its sequel, Galaxy 2, non-existent, then I'm pretty sure that the Mario franchise wouldn't be as great as it is. I mean, you can say that 64 and Sunshine are great games, but Galaxy 2 will always be a major improvement since I played it and experienced it when it comes to its predecessors. I only played 64 on the Virtual Console on the Nintendo Wii, and as for Sunshine, just like Wind Waker, it's really difficult to find these days. Granted, 3D All-Stars has Mario 64, Sunshine, and this game so that you can play the first 3D Mario games, but the thing is, this isn't the Wind Waker situation since I've played the first game and the third game. Sunshine, let's be honest, is a way too difficult game for me to handle, and I've already completed Galaxy 1 and 2. So as far as I'm concerned, I've already proved my point on me being a Mario fan since 2010. Especially the addition of Rosalina and the fact that the comic observatory is the home where her and Luna are living, while it's mostly the hub world of you to get to your next destination. This game really had it all, and it gave me so much great nostalgia memories of Mario. Even if I have some kind of chance to play the other Mario games that I wish I wanted to play, mainly the Thousand Year Door, I can still remember that Galaxy was always the game that easily got me into the franchise so much. I may play Mario as a character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Winter Games, but let me just say right now, Galaxy is the game where you should really see what Mario can do when it comes to mainstream video games. Because without Galaxy, I'm pretty sure that we will probably not get a sequel or see what Odyssey did, since it took inspiration by doing something completely different than Galaxy. Out of all the Zelda games I enjoyed the most when it comes to its qualities, Twilight Princess definitely trumps them all. And yes, I understand that there are other people's opinions on which Zelda game is superior, like Wind Waker Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild, but the thing is, when people just address how dark Twilight Princess is and just disown it when it comes to being different compared to other Zelda games, you need to understand that this is actually the very first Zelda game that is considered the game that we've been waiting since the GameCube became the next 6th generation of systems for Nintendo. At first, I really didn't like this game when I first played it back in 2010, while getting into the mechanics, not to mention the wolf segments in this, but the thing is, after so many years, I've grown accustomed to them, mainly for how they make Twilight Princess different but also interesting compared to other Zelda games. Even though that the Twilight Realm was something that I didn't enjoy when I was little, I still found it really good considering of how much my opinion of the Twilight Realm has changed. This really shows that Twilight Princess really aged since it came out in 2006. The overworld, even if it's nowhere big than Wind Waker by the time this game was released, it's probably the perfect size to see what Hyrule is like when it comes to the realistic setting. And let me just say that nearly every dungeon, not to mention every side quest you do in this game, makes this game a lot more similar to Ocarina of Time, which IGN say that this is the spiritual sequel to Ocarina of Time. Usually people may debate on whether they agree with IGN or not, but back then they still actually made some good reviews. And for me personally, playing this nearly every single time I got the interest of playing Twilight Princess, it never gets old. And I think that no matter how much I appreciate other Zelda games, I'm pretty sure that I missed out a lot when it comes to Twilight Princess's qualities. With Midna being a very great character, along with Zant being a secondary antagonist, not to mention that the side characters are really interesting to get to know, Twilight Princess really knew how to handle nearly everything that what a Zelda game needs. And considering that this is the Zelda game that we've been waiting until the GameCube came out, and the fact that they took time to make this similar to Ocarina of Time, but much more better when it comes to gameplay and graphics, Twilight Princess really had it all. Now let me explain onto why I consider this the most favorite Zelda game compared to others, mainly Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time. In Ocarina of Time, it was still the very first 3D Zelda game, and even though it's considered my second favorite Zelda game, I will admit that there are still later Zelda games that can't easily top this one, and that's this game. Majora's Mask, even if I did play it for the majority in 2013, and I did enjoy its qualities compared to Ocarina of Time, but at the same time, I still had some issues with it that really made me drag away for considering it a great game. Granted, Majora's Mask is supposed to be different compared to Ocarina of Time, but at the same time, I just couldn't be able to get into it that much. Wind Waker, as much as I desperately wanted to play that game, it really wasn't as good the more I remember it. Skyward Sword, even if I didn't add anything involving Skyward Sword on this list, and as much as I found it probably the most interesting Zelda game out of the bunch, I don't even consider it mostly a good game, mostly that the mechanics, not to mention that the overworld isn't as big as I thought. Breath of the Wild, I did play that game, but at the same time, I really didn't do much when it comes to understanding everything about it. I did see reviews of it, but at the same time, I don't remember them that much. But what Twilight Princess has compared to those games is that the detail it did is a lot more different, but a lot more better. Especially with how much I enjoy playing most of the dungeons and side quests with the motion controls. Granted, Skyward Sword did the motion controls much more better since that it was made 5 years after Twilight Princess, but I can still say that the controls in Twilight Princess are still fine as it is. So I really think that the controls in this game is probably my most favorite out of any other Zelda game. And what I consider what Twilight Princess does the most is where the stakes are at the most highest. Granted, people can't take this game seriously when it's way too dark, but let's be honest, I understand that later Zelda games won't do this type of formula again, but I actually think that the dark elements in Twilight Princess really makes this game stand out than other Zelda games. Considering of how much that we get Ganondorf, and the fact that Link is going through so much psychotic situations that consider this game a lot more edgier than Wind Waker, which Wind Waker is the complete opposite. I still think that they still managed to make the dark elements in this probably a major factor, but let's be real, I'm pretty sure that there's gonna be so many people that would easily disagree with me on this. All in all, I still consider Twilight Princess as one of my most favorite Zelda game out of any other Zelda game. Granted, it took this long for me to come to this conclusion, but I'm pretty sure that if you will play Zelda, which is Twilight Princess again, then you might understand where I'm coming from. But there is one video game that stands out the most out of any of the entries that I've mentioned on this list. Here is my top 10 classical video game of all time. If you're gonna say that this is way too similar to my top 10 endings list where I ranked Explores the Sky at number 1, and I'm ranking that to this at number 1, may I remind you that the endings were mainly about the story, and even though I'm gonna discuss about the story in this a lot, and I did go against my point about me addressing the gameplay earlier in this video, I just can't be able to get over the fact of how great Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky is, even to this day. But getting into the story later, I consider that the gameplay in this is probably the best spin-off material compared to the main story in the video games. Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky being a spin-off from Pokemon, and the fact that they managed to put every detail to make it its own thing, but also much more better, is a huge accomplishment. I really enjoy nearly everything, and for a video game that came out in the 4th generation of Pokemon, I might consider on picking on which generation is superior. With me picking the 3rd generation, I think that there are other generations, mainly the 4th, can easily top this. But then again, I've already addressed onto why I didn't like the later generations when I talked about Pokemon Diamond. The gameplay being mostly similar to Blue and Red Rescue Team, I think that it's fine as it is because they completely decrease the difficulty level compared to Explorers of Time and Darkness. And let me just say, as much as I enjoyed playing Explorers of Time when it first came out, I still had one painful time with it by beating all the bosses to the point that I ended up using codes in order to increase my levels to 100, as so as my partner. But in this game, I really didn't need any codes. Mainly the fact that they made the difficulty level really normalized to make any other newcomer to handle it. Because let me just say this right now, I'm pretty sure that regardless of Explosive Time and Darkness when they first came out, have positive reviews despite the difficulty level, Explosive Sky, along with the additions it had by decreasing the difficulty, really makes Explosive Sky the better game to get. Well, then again, this is mostly a remake when it comes to the first two games, not to mention the additional content you can do, but I can say right now that Explosive Sky is a much more better game when it comes to its standard difficulty level that isn't the same as Explorers of Time and Darkness. But let me say it right now, that nearly everything about this game, if you want to talk about the story, the music, nearly everything about it, it's the major contributing factors, which is why the gameplay is mostly overshadowed to games like these. Nearly the music is so great that in Explosive Sky, you can have a jukebox so that you can listen to all the songs once you unlock them by going through most of the levels, and you can able to play 5 special episodes catered to the other characters in this video game. Really shows how much Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Time and Darkness was so popular in 2008 that they end up making special episodes for the 2009 game so that people can see the development towards other characters. And let me tell you, the music really makes everything worth it. And I can't be able to get tired of it for how long I listen to them. The story in this is the contributing factor to all contributing factors, if you include the great music into those scenes. The addition of you being into a Pokemon, which is similar to Blue and Red Rescue Team, along with going on so many adventures with your partner, and the fact that you learn that you're from the future with Grovyle as your partner, really makes the storytelling in this a lot more different compared to the last. And it's a lot more difficult to see on how the future Mystery Dungeon games may try to take a different route, but at the same time, not on the same levels of what Explosive Sky did. After nearly 13 or 12 years since this game has came out, nearly no other Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game may be able to capture the emotional feeling of what this game did. Granted, like I said, they want to do different things, but at the same time, considering that Super Mystery Dungeon is considered the final game besides the Red Rescue, Blue Rescue Team DX remixes, I'm pretty sure that they just can't be able to top of what they did in Explosive Sky, which is mostly a shame because I think that they could have done a lot more interesting ideas to make the emotional moments a lot more similar to Explosive Sky, but as its own thing. It doesn't even matter how old this video game is. And the last time I played this was either 6 or 7 years ago. But for everything of what I expressed involving the last 19 entries on this list, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explosive Sky never gets old, and it hasn't been outdated whatsoever. Granted, you can say that when it comes to the future installments like Gates to Infinity and Super Mystery Dungeon when it comes to graphics and stuff, but let me just say right now that Explosive Sky really deserves a remake, just like the original did. Granted, they're probably working on it at the present day, since that they're trying to make everyone pleased when it comes to this installment, just like the DX remake, but I can give them time just so that they can handle most of the problems the original had, not to mention making some major improvements. Even if I'm not going to be able to play the remake once it comes out on the Nintendo Switch or the next generation of Nintendo's latest system, I can easily watch the footage from anyone else's gameplay of it, because as far as I'm concerned, me watching the gameplay is all I need to see what the remake does compared to the original. everything about this video game requires its own video. In other words, a review. But considering I've been addressing of how much I enjoyed the ending 2 years ago, along with the gameplay and story, not to mention with this being probably the best spin-off game involving Pokemon, I think I've addressed everything that needs to be talked about. If you want my opinion on this, if you manage to find a copy of Explosive Sky, then go get it. Not to mention that you can easily get infested with the characters, but if you can't, then I recommend watching a playthrough of it from someone else so that you can actually see of how spectacular this game is. Regardless if this may not be one of my most favorite games when it comes to modern reasons, I will still consider Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explosive Sky as the best classical video game of all time. This video was way too difficult to make, not to mention of how long it took me to put everything together. All in all, I'm not gonna be making another video like this anytime soon, especially with other videos being pushed aside for later schedules. Considering of how much that video games mean so much to me and the fact that this is the second or third time I'm talking about video games, it really shows onto why my video game ideals involving videos were way more limited than it was when I first started making my YouTube channel. But I will say this though, the next time I'm going to be doing a video similar to this, it will be much more shorter than this and the top 10 endings video that I made 2 years ago. That way I could put a lot less stress whenever I get to my next schedule involving video games while taking footage from other users in the process. Granted, I don't know what that video is going to be like, but hopefully it won't be as difficult as this video, including my top 10s endings video. Anyway, since that we're halfway into August, Summerpalooza 3 is just getting bigger and better. And let me just say right now, if you thought that this was literally the only video that's considered the longest in this month, then you have no idea what I have in store, because there was one video that is way more longer than this, trust me. You'll find out once that video is uploaded. I'm Lonely Fanboy 4 here, and I'll see you guys with more Summerpalooza 3 videos on the way.
Let's get this started again.